debilitating cold descending on the Lone Star State. Haunted by memories of 2021's deadly winter storm, Texans now bracing for frigid conditions and genuinely hopeful the lights stay on. Here at home, Harris County Democratic leaders opening the taxpayer's wallet to help out the poor. Will a guaranteed income for those in need prove a hand up or just another hand out? And in cancer-plagued Fifth Ward, Houston's new mayor places a relocation proposal on pause. Will moving residents off contaminated ground prove way more expensive than anyone thought? Groogan, and welcome to What's Your Point, where our panelists call it like they see it. Let's greet them. Starting us off, well-known attorney and conservative commentator Gary Polland. Next up, longtime Houston journalist and social worker Chau Nguyen. In the 3 spot, well-known and sometimes feared super neighborhood leader Tomaro Bell. Batting cleanup, prolific Houston investigator Wayne Dolcefino. And closing us out, respected businessman and columnist for Real Clear Politics, Bill King. Let's begin.
We feel very good about the status of the Texas power grid and ERCOT to be able to effectively and successfully ensure that the power is going to stay on throughout the entirety of this winter storm episode.
Words of reassurance from Texas Governor Greg Abbott ahead of the polar vortex descending on the Lone Star State from the north. With temperatures expected to dip into the teens early this week, ERCOT placed the potential for a power emergency at 1 and 6. That said, the governor is projecting lots of confidence that we will not endure a repeat of 2021's deadly winter blackout.
Power generators are fully inspected and prepared and winterized for this process. They have never been as prepared for a winter event as they are today.
Perhaps most telling, ERCOT has not yet felt the need to issue a conservation request to consumers. Indicative, one would think, that the grid has plenty of juice. Panel, the temperatures will certainly be cold, but from a political perspective, the heat to perform will certainly be focused on Greg Abbott and his administration. And with that, I'm going to go straight over to Bill King, because you watch stuff like this pretty closely.
I'm cautiously optimistic about the grid in this particular storm. This storm is really nothing like the Uri storm in 2021. It's not going to be nearly that severe. This will be a really great test to see whether or not the changes we've made have really, made the grid more resilient. My sense is they have to some degree. I'm not sure we would withstand another Uri that was such an unusual event. But I'm thinking on this one, we're probably going to get by okay.
All right, Tomaro Bell, it's your inclination and your practice to worry about the most vulnerable of our citizens out there. What are you hearing?
Well, the most vulnerable are very, very concerned about it, and I appreciate so much the city opening the warming centers, but I got calls from the people in Fifth Ward and Independent Heights, Trinity Gardens, Cashmere Gardens over there in that area. They're very, very concerned because they don't have a warming center over there. And you're talking about the most vulnerable populations. They don't even have their homes repaired from Uri, and so they are deeply concerned about it. There is one that has been opened by the wonderful Pastor Eckhart over in Greens Point, along with Congresswoman Sheila Jackson-Lee. NAC is going to get the food, and the ushers and the people at the church. This is what you call about neighbors helping neighbors over in there. So I'm very concerned about it. If the state hadn't passed a law to say you pay your bill, but they don't got to give you no electricity or any gas, I wouldn't be worried, but I am.
All right, Chau, when you and I first met, you were a journalist. I find myself leaning on you all the time now because of your other background, which is social work and the human mentality. This has got to be bothering a lot of people. I mean, it's like the run-up where we've been talking about it for weeks. It's going to get cold. Does that have an impact on people?
I just think when you hear the governor and the legislature, who really haven't done much but weatherize the gas plants over the last few years, it's a call for serious concern. I don't think Texans are sitting around going, oh, I feel so good about this weather event coming ahead of me. We haven't done anything to take advantage of the Inflation Reduction Act, which would help us to weatherize our homes. We know that the event of Uri really took a toll on the grid because half the homes were using it. So take advantage of the order that the governor signed last year, who said, hey, let's get Texans this opportunity to get their homes energy efficient so that we wouldn't rely on the grid. And it's time to look ahead and join the grid of the rest of the country to make those costs, those exorbitant costs that Texans had to pay for their power bills after Uri, an opportunity.
Gary Polland, let's talk about political brass tacks. Greg Abbott won by double figures, but every time we have the potential for a weather catastrophe, all of that capital, that political capital, is at risk, correct?
Well, I think clearly he wants to get out front and talk about what they think they've accomplished, and I agree with Bill. This is a good test of the grid. I don't think the reforms that we need are finished. But here's another point. You know, we were told that Houston had the greatest homeless people's program in the country, according to the late Mayor Sylvester Turner. But if you drove, on the way here this morning, I drove, there are people sleeping under underpasses. So what are they going to do when the temperatures hit in the 20s and teens? That is a big problem. No one else was talking about it. I'm concerned because we haven't solved the homeless problem.
All right, a little known fact. Wayne Dolcefino reared in the north, got to Texas as fast as he could. You know, you've been through a lot of these as a reporter, as a resident. You know, what's your take? Are we ready? We add 1,000 new residents every day in Texas. Those are all electric consumers.
Yeah, first of all, I've lost my Flatbush blood a long time ago. But look, I gotta tell you, there's some things that I'm good at, some things I know nothing about, and it's power is one of them. I was looking up stuff the legislature did in the last session. I don't understand any of it, except for one thing. I voted against low-interest loans, and I'll tell you why I did. I don't like giving low-interest money to rich folk. Rich folk can afford to borrow money like everybody else.
All right, look, you may not have to worry because last I heard, not a single private investor has taken the state up on those low-interest loans to build dispatchable natural gas generation. Isn't that right, Bill?
That's right. Yeah, but you know, I didn't realize that Wayne's a Yankee. It explains a whole lot now that I know that.
It's culture.
Yeah. Look, I would not want to go through another Uri storm the way the grid is conditioned right now. But this is not a Uri storm. I want to keep emphasizing that. We were at, you know, nearly zero temperatures for about 4 days. This is a 48-hour event, and it looks like, you know, here the temperatures are going to be in the mid-20s, which is, you know, not a hard freeze even. So I think because the event is not so severe, we're not likely to have those kind of problems. But it's going to be a really good test to see if we have any, you know, problems around the system.
I'm going to have you call Michelle. She had me foraging for firewood in the country yesterday. Still to come, monthly cash payments, no questions asked for nearly 2,000 families. The experiment with guaranteed incomes is happening in Harris County. And in our Sunday survey, we are asking viewers if regular cash stipends for low-income Texans is a good use of tax dollars. Tell us what you think. Vote on our webpage, fox26houston.com. Just click on poll at the top of the page, or tell 26 using our news app. But up next, the continuing call to slam the brakes on $100 million worth of affordable public housing being constructed right next to badly contaminated land.
It just makes common sense. Why would you continue building a structure when really you don't know if it's safe for anybody to live in it? So let's make sure that it's safe, safe for the low-income families who have no other choice but to live there. Let's make sure they live in a safe and healthy environment.
State Representative Christina Morales this week calling on newly sworn Mayor John Whitmire to freeze construction of the controversial low-income housing project at 800 Middle Street in 2nd Ward. The reason is well documented. This $100 million plus complex is literally surrounded by contaminated property. Everything from toxic lead at a former state Superfund site to untold tons of incinerator ash laced with a whole range of poisons, including dioxin. Mayor Whitmire, who spoke out against this Turner administration boondoggle on the campaign trail, had this to say Wednesday.
Greg, I'm on top of it, but you know, I'd like to hold the developer and the department that authorized it accountable, and we will. But good reporting on your part. It's very frustrating to watch something go forward and feel like you've somewhat got your hands tied.
Panel, what could certainly untie the mayor's hands are the results of an independent environmental assessment ordered by the State Department of Housing and Community Affairs. Scientific findings which are due next month. I'm going to start with you, Bill King, because you've looked at it on the ground there. You've read all the stuff. This is a big mess.
It is a big mess, and it's going to be a big legal mess. You know, the developer that came in bought the property based on representations from the city housing department that this land was all okay to build on. You know, the city housing department gave the developer reports that said, you know, it's all cleaned up, it's all fine. Now, those reports seem to be questionable, let's put it that way. And certainly the properties around it, even if that's true, have all sorts of problems. You know, I'm not sure John's got the legal power to close this thing down. And if he did, I'm sure the developer is going to sue the city. So this is going to be another gigantic mess that he's inherited from the previous administration.
Yeah, credit where credit's due. 4 or 5 years ago, Wayne had his eyeballs on this thing and said, this stinks. It's one of those PFCs, right?
Yeah, look. The reality of this is going to turn out to be one of the big scandals that we uncover coming out of the Turner administration, right? Because now there are going to be people that are actually going to look at it and say, this thing stunk from the get-go, right? This was $60 million or so spent on dirt and crappy dirt. And you said those reports were questionable? Those reports were bull, okay? Those environmental reports would show like a beautiful field, right? It's a beautiful field. And it wouldn't show the pictures of the ash going into the bayou right next door.
Tomorrow, final word to you, and I'll come back later.
Wayne was talking about this was bad from the get-go, and he is correct. But where he is wrong is where the get-go started. This property closed in 2012. Sylvester Turner was not the mayor.
2020.
No, the sale started back then negotiating. You know that. That's when they started. It started under the previous administration. And this, the problem that I have was, did the city know this when they bought it? Because a third of the land had to be removed from the deal, but the $50 million price still stayed the same.
Let's keep our eye on it. When we come back, Houston's new mayor says relocating dozens of families from cancer-plagued Fifth Ward could cost millions more than previously thought.
They're looking at our leadership saying, you know, when are they actually going to be true to their word?
They're going to say, see, I told you. They weren't really interested in doing anything.
Protests this week by some on city council after Houston Mayor John Whitmire asked for and received a 1-month pause to reevaluate a voluntary relocation plan for Fifth Ward residents living on land contaminated by cancer-causing creosote. Whitmire says the strategy in place appeared incomplete and lacked organization. He also says the cost of moving dozens of families could prove 6 times higher than the total of $7 million currently set aside by the city.
I just want to be as transparent and open with the residents as possible. They're depending on us.
Panel, the mayor was granted the 1-month pause on a 12-5 vote, buying him time to reach out to the county, the state, and the feds, as well as the responsible party for the pollution, Union Pacific, in an effort, he says, to enlist more financial resources and collaboration. Tomorrow, I'm going to start with you here. Did this need to be done?
Yes, absolutely. And I applaud it and sent him a text to tell him this was the right thing to do. The unfortunate thing, when people hear pause, they hit panic. Because pause for so many of these communities means stop, do nothing. And that's the last thing that they want. But this absolutely needs to be cleared, because the difference between the land bank and the land trust is a big one. And that tax ramification that those residents will feel, some of them cannot sustain. You don't want to move out and be homeless a year later. So I applaud him for doing that. It's not just the tax ramifications, it's the light bill, it's the water bill. All of this is involved in that. And you need to know. And what I love, I spoke to Councilmember Tasha Jackson, who is also making sure that they get the details, and Kathy Buford Daniels, who's on the committee, is let these people know what they will do. And you all need to know, they don't have to move if they don't want to move. But they need to know that if they have pre-existing tax on that property that they're moving from, that has to be paid first.
Gary, what's your take on all this?
Look, this is a pattern of the leadership we had from the Turner administration over the last 8 years, basically going off half-cocked. And so what Whitmire's doing is being fiscally responsible. This is more, I think it's going to cost more than we've allocated. We need to figure out how we're going to get it paid for. He didn't say he didn't want to do it, but he's got to go find the resources. And going to the parties he talked about is really good. This is actually a refreshing view of how the city should be run.
Yeah, you know, based upon my, I guess, interpretation of what the mayor was saying, he says, look, we're going to take care of these people. Just give me a minute to regroup here. Let me go Chau and then Bill.
Well, finally, one thing I would say is, why does our rear view mirror keep on working, Wayne and Gary? Let's stop talking about the last administration. Let's move forward. I'm glad to see progress, because so many of these families who I counseled, many of them, they don't have a pot to piss on. And so they don't have a voice. They don't have an option to live where they live. Let's give them the opportunity, let's give the mayor an opportunity to do this judiciously and make sure the families who want to move in a safe and respectful manner.
Okay, I'm going to go Wayne real quick.
Yeah, 2 years ago I did investigations of this for a lawyer named Jason Gibson, who's suing on behalf of the residents. You know, we have not raised the right-of-way fees on Union Pacific since the 60s, which is the amount of money we charge them to use the intersection in our city. You want to get the money? That's my idea. Jack up their fees. Let them take care of all this. Why am I? Look, I feel bad for these people. It's horrible. Why is it my money? Why isn't it their money?
All right, Bill.
Well, first of all, I think you do have to look in the rearview mirror here, because he is inheriting these problems. Now, you know, 6 months or a year from now, I'll agree with you. But for right now, first few weeks of this administration, I think we got to admit that these are inherited problems. But the other thing to remember about this, one of the reasons that one of the concerns the mayor had was that there's like $1 million or more than that in consulting fees to send this money out. You know, who is getting that money? What deal was cut for that?
50 grand a house. It's only 42 houses. Make sure y'all understand that.
You know, I'm not great at math, but $2 million in administration for a $5 million set aside seems like
I'll go do it for nothing.
All right.
And I'll bet Gary will come help me do it for nothing.
Okay.
Robin Hoods.
Okay, hey, we're going to leave that there. Up next, Republicans waging war on each other. The latest ugly chapter in a lingering conflict which may well threaten the future of the Texas GOP. Welcome back. Open hostilities within the Texas Republican Party appear to be intensifying. Exhibit A, Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick's public comments this week regarding the audit he demanded of costs associated with the impeachment and Senate acquittal of Attorney General Ken Paxton. Patrick accuses House Speaker and fellow Republican Dade Phelan of seeking to hide the cost of what the Lieutenant Governor refers to as a sham inquiry. Indicative of just how nasty and personal this has become, Patrick said, and I quote, "Phelan is no better than Hunter Biden. Slippery Dade's intentions are clear. Hide the actual cost of the impeachment from the public," end quote. Panel, I think it's important to point out, polling tells us a majority of Texans, including a substantial number of independents and Republicans, believe the prosecution of Ken Paxton was totally justified, and if anything deserved the label sham, it was the Senate trial and preordained vote to acquit. I'm going to start with you, Gary Polland, because you watched it. We had a highly thought of special leading up to it, you know, taking apart all of the evidence. What's going on in the Republican Party, your Republican Party?
I think that Patrick wants to do what he can to defeat Phelan so he doesn't get reelected, first to his House seat and secondly to be Speaker. And so I think it's personal. I just don't think these guys like each other. I will say on my drive to New Orleans, I went through Phelan's district, which was quite large, multiple counties, and he had signs everywhere. So I suspect it's going to be hard to beat Dave Phelan. And then going back to if he wants to be Speaker again, he doesn't need a lot of votes. He needs, what, 15 or 20 Republican votes, and he's Speaker. So they're going to have to work together. I mean, I think we need to get past this. I understand the polling on Paxton, and Paxton is out there guns blazing, going after state reps that have voted against him and other people, so he's really active. I don't know what's going to happen. Some people call it a circular firing squad. I don't think it's going to knock the GOP off its high perch here, but it doesn't help getting things done in Austin.
Hey, Bill, I called Mark Jones just to double check. I said, I'm right. A majority of Texans, when you add them all up, think that the Paxton prosecution was justified. And he said, absolutely. And that Patrick is preaching to who he usually preaches to, which is the 2 million Republican primary voters.
Yeah, look, this is they don't care about what the majority of Texans think. All they care about is what a majority of Republican primary voters think, you know. And by the way, if you look at the people that vote in both primaries together, it's typically about 15 or 20% of registered voters. So we're letting those people decide who we have to vote for in November. Look, the only thing the Republican Party has going for it in Texas is how awful the Democratic Party is. If it wasn't for that, they would be in real trouble.
All right, Wayne, you know, you followed this pretty closely, and your son is an assistant attorney general. So, but I'm going to allow you to comment on this.
Ooh, that's wrong.
Look, I've sued his boss before. I'd sue his boss again. I don't have it. Look, this is a bloodletting, and I made a speech to the Magic Circle Republican Women's Club a few weeks ago, and I said, this stuff has got to stop. If you look at what crazy stuff the Democrats are doing, we're worrying about some intramural skirmish over personal stuff and who was on which side of the impeachment. The impeachment was a bust because they didn't have all their facts. They sort of did what prosecutors sometimes do, sort of overcharge, because they can't make it. When you say somebody paid for somebody's granite and you can't prove they paid for someone's granite, your case is going to go down the tubes.
All right, Tomaro.
Okay, then you're talking to somebody whose son work in his office. No, don't be listening to him, y'all. Okay, listen. This is about one thing and one thing only. Patty Paxton and his crew has not paid their loan back, and this man want his money. And that's why he asking the people, well, where's the money from the state that y'all used for the trial? Because maybe he could get that back. Look, this should have happened. The trial was justified. I am so glad that he did not win when he just tried to get it thrown out recently. They need to, look, this is unconscionable that this is what the state attorney general is doing, and everybody's like, it's okay.
Okay, Chau, just to Bill's statement that Democrats are not taking advantage of this disarray.
Well, Democrats have had a marketing PR problem for many, many, many years. It doesn't get lost on me when I hear these sound bites from the lieutenant governor that he is a former journalist. So sound bites, name calling, those things are very typical, right, for people who are like spot news.
That's right.
and what sells. What I would say is when you see this, it's like an episode of Mean Girls, right? Just talking back and forth, and kids.
There's a new version.
What kind of reflection are we really doing for the young people?
And with that wisdom, we go to break. When we come back, handing out cash to those in Harris County struggling to make ends meet. It's not charity, it's an experiment with your tax dollars.
These programs have been implemented around the world and around the nation with positive results.
Nearly 9% of our workforce are working poor, and they don't earn enough to make ends meet. That's taking its toll on families and undermining our region's economic health and prosperity.
Judge Lena Hidalgo and Commissioner Rodney Ellis launching Harris County's brand new Guaranteed Income Program. Labeled a pilot, the plan is to give 1,900 low-income residents monthly payments of $500 each over the course of a year and a half. Funding for this no-strings-attached stipend is being drawn from federal pandemic aid, and supporters say similar programs elsewhere have helped families achieve upward economic mobility. Uplift Harris, as it's been dubbed, has also drawn detractors, including Commissioner Tom Ramsey, who believes there are far more pressing county obligations that are short on resources.
When you have folks dying in the jail, I think our money would be much more well spent in addressing those incredible needs than trying to find several hundred people to give $500 a month to.
Okay, panel, is this a useful hand up or potentially wasteful handout? I ask you, Gary Polland.
Look, it's a joke. And number two, I believe that there's a Attorney General's opinion been requested by Senator Betancourt. I think it's going to be found to be unconstitutional. I don't think that the county has the authority to do this. The county's not home rule. City could do it. County can't do it. So I think it's going to get struck down. But even beyond that, think about this. Look at the percentage of employees of Harris County, people working, who make less than $60,000 a year. It's a significant percentage, and they've not been great with raises for them over the years. Because I've talked to these people when I see them in the courthouse. These are the bailiffs and the people who are the jail attendants and the like. So if we have extra money, which I don't believe we do, by the way, but if we do, why don't we start paying and giving more money to the people who actually are working for the county, and not giving money to the 1,500 or 2,000 people who win the lottery, the lucky lottery. We're going to give you money. And by the way, the last time we had big grants from the federal government, remember, lots of people got money that decided to go buy designer purses because there are no strings. So whatever, buy whatever you want. Same thing can be done here. This is outrageous. Unless you agree that everything being done in Harris County is perfect, we don't need any other things.
Chau, 95% of the folks in our Sunday survey agree with Gary, but I suspect you see this differently.
Well, this is a particular network, isn't it? Yes, I 1,000% disagree with Gary, and here's what I'll say. Join me on the front lines. Talk to those single mothers who are just a paycheck away from losing their cell phone to connect with their family members, getting a car seat to get from one place to another. There are major emergent needs for single families, single mother families, families of low income, and we see it quite a bit in the world in which I work in. I don't know if you guys are at the front lines, but let me tell you, $500 may not be anything to Gary, who sits in a suit and tie, and we're all in air-conditioned cover living our comfortable lives, but it is a life-changing difference. And, you know, not to mention inflation, not to mention the higher costs of everything in our community. It is imperative, and it's much needed.
Okay, Tomaro, you talk to folks in the neighborhoods all the time. You've heard two articulate arguments one way or the other. Your thoughts?
I was concerned as to why it wasn't for all Harris County. It's only in particular zip codes. That I have a problem with, because you have poor people all over the city. They're not designated to one area. So that really, really concerned me of how it ended up. And the last time they had a program where you could get money, since they cannot outright ask, are you black, white, Hispanic, or whatever, they had this questionnaire, and it was like, well, if you could volunteer, would you volunteer for Vietnamese? Would you volunteer for African American? Would you volunteer for Spanish? Would you volunteer for LGBT? Would you? So it was another way. So I was really, when I read through that one, I was really concerned about it. And there are other areas. The jail, I mean, if we can do that, and like Gary said, them people, they got people who work for the county who literally, like Chau said, they barely making it themselves. So, yeah, I do have some concerns about it.
20 seconds, Wayne.
Government is a Christmas tree for everyone. Look, no. Government has become a Christmas tree. Please, free money. It's federal money. It doesn't exist. They're looking for reasons to spend money that we shouldn't have spent in the first place, because COVID's been over for 3 years and we're still spending COVID money.
We're going to hear from Bill King in overtime, because I want to hear what he thinks about the efficacy of these programs. Still to come, Donald Trump's controversial and potentially game-changing legal claim that all American presidents are completely immune from criminal prosecution. But up next, we are now just hours away from caucusing in Iowa, and an answer to the question, can anybody gain ground on the front-running former president?
He said he was going to build a wall and have Mexico pay for it. He did not deliver that. He said he was going to eliminate the debt, and he added $7.8 trillion to the debt.
For me, it's very much about no drama, no whining, and getting results and getting them done.
Republican presidential candidates Ron DeSantis and Nikki Haley ahead of tomorrow's Iowa caucuses, both hoping for a stronger than expected showing and both hopeful of picking up Chris Christie supporters after the former New Jersey governor dropped out. Meantime, this week, the frontrunner, former President Trump, was already taking a pre-caucus victory lap.
I have polls that show me leading by a tremendous amount in New Hampshire and a lot in Iowa, and nationwide we're leading by almost 60 points. So I'm not exactly worried.
Panel, if there's any wild card here, it's likely the weather, with a low temperature of -17 forecast Monday for Cedar Rapids and -14 in Des Moines. That's chilly, Bill King. What do you see anything happening in Iowa?
Look, I don't think you can keep him from the nomination, but I would point out that he consistently polls about 50% of Republicans. So half of even the Republicans, which is a tiny subset of the whole country, doesn't want him to be president. And I think that says something about his general election prospects. But, you know, what the problem is, all these people want to run to be president, and they keep splitting up the non-Trump vote. It's exactly the same thing that happened in 2016. I was glad to see Christie get out. That may help consolidate that. After New Hampshire, we may see a two-person race in the Republican primary.
All right, Gary.
Yeah, I think Bill's right. I think what's going to happen is that Haley is going to do better than expected in Iowa, and I think that's the end of DeSantis' campaign because he spent so much resources in Iowa. I think that Haley can win in New Hampshire, and then the big question becomes what happens in South Carolina. I'll tell you that Trump is a little disingenuous because he tells you how far ahead he is, he's not worried. His campaign is now spending the majority of its funds attacking Nikki Haley. So if that was the case, that, you know, I'm 60 points ahead, it doesn't matter, why would you be doing that? So I think that's important to watch. I think she is, and she's a candidate that I think is also going to scare Democrats because she polls better than Trump against a Democrat, though I'm sure that if she's the nominee, she'll get demonized too.
Yeah, I saw a poll where Nikki Haley beats Joe Biden by 12. Wayne, you talk to a lot of Republicans, and they're not dumb people. You know, that
breaking news.
Well, no, they know about President Trump's character flaws, and yet they have doubled down on him.
Yeah, because he's perceived as a fighter. And a lot of Republican voters are simply frustrated that this country is sliding down a cliff in the way government runs, in culture, in everything. And they view Trump. And I actually think DeSantis says the same things. And I actually am a little surprised that he has not stayed more popular because Trump does have a lot of baggage. And again, as Nikki Haley says, right or wrong, right? And I think all that indictment stuff is all a bunch of nonsense, right? I think Trump would have been a lot more beatable if the Democrats and the Justice Department had not made him a martyr.
All right, we've been talking with the Fox Texas trio about the issue of abortion and whether that's going to drive Democratic moderate voters to the polls in opposition of Trump. What do you think?
Well, this is the opportunity where you go, hello, Democratic Party, are you still there? An opportunity for them to raise their voices, an opportunity for movements like the Women's March to go out there and say, enough is enough. We're tired of seeing politics that makes no sense, like we're living in an alternate reality. This is a time for those factions to raise their voices, and we haven't heard much.
All right, we got to leave it there. When we come back, lawyers for Donald Trump back in court and arguing only Congress can hold presidents accountable, even if they commit criminal acts.
Could a president order SEAL Team 6 to assassinate a political rival? Good question. That's an official act in order to SEAL Team 6?
He would have to be and would speedily be, impeached and convicted before the criminal prosecution.
But if you weren't, there would be no criminal prosecution, no criminal liability for that?
Justices of the United States Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit considering Donald Trump's claim that presidents enjoy absolute immunity from criminal prosecution. Lawyers for Mr. Trump have claimed a president can only be charged with a crime after he or she has first been convicted by the Senate after an impeachment trial. Panel, I listened to the entire hearing, and the three-judge panel seemed highly skeptical. Before I go to the lawyers, I'm going to go to you. I suspect you're highly skeptical.
The emperor has no damn clothes. Let this man go. What is the problem? I mean, let him go. He needs to be put under the biggest rock we could find. Every time y'all talk about him and some stupid stuff he did, he just like thrives on that. Let his ass go. Lock him up, do whatever you're gonna do, but get him off the news. I promise you, media, you will survive without Trump. You can make it. Trust me, okay?
Bill, assessment.
Their legal argument is absurd on its face. It will be absolutely voted 3-0 in this panel. When it gets to the Supreme Court, I think it'll be a unanimous decision against it. The idea that the president can do anything he wants to, and if the Senate doesn't convict him of impeachment, which is a 2/3 vote, by the way, that he can never be prosecuted for anything he did while in office. I mean, the founders must be rolling over in their grave right now thinking that that's actually how we're interpreting their Constitution.
Councilor Gary Polland, do you agree with that assessment?
Yes, and with a little nuance. I believe that the claim they made about engaging in criminal activity that has nothing to do with public policy or being president is correct. It's not going to fly. However, what Bill said, I'm not sure, I don't think he meant that. There is protection that the president can't be prosecuted for, like, sending SEAL Team 6 into Hootie Land and killing the leaders. That can't happen. That's because that's part of his job and area. You get outside the responsibility of being president, I think that this thing gets shot down. But the arguments, I mean, I would not make these arguments to the court. I've argued before the Supreme Court of Texas a number of times, Fifth Circuit. I would never come forward with an argument so ludicrous. And what I enjoyed about the argument, as you did, the judges took this lawyer apart, and then they handed him back what was left of his reputation.
All right, Wayne, you talk to enough lawyers, you could probably you could do okay on the bar exam.
No,
what's your take here?
No. Look, dumb argument, but I go back to what I said before. I don't think we should even be here. I think this whole special counsel, election interference, trying to get around insurrection this way and that way, it's all not good for the country. If you want to get rid of Donald Trump and move on, then what the Democrats have done has made him a martyr in a way that I think they've underestimated his potential allure to the public.
Interesting. Still ahead. After years of drug use and dodging taxes, presidential son Hunter Biden now facing years of potential prison time. Will he actually pay the price or skate with a pardon from dear old dad? Between 2016 and October 15th to 2020, the defendant spent this money on drugs, escorts, and girlfriends, luxury hotels and rental properties, exotic cars, clothing, and other items of a personal nature. In short, everything but his taxes. Thus read the charging document in the federal government's latest case against 53-year-old Hunter Biden. The president's son failed to pay taxes on more than $7 million in income between 2016 and 2019. If he's convicted, the crime carries a maximum punishment of up to 17 years in prison. Panel, what kind of impact could or should Hunter Biden's legal reckoning have on his father's bid for re-election? I'll ask you, Chau.
Well, when I read something like that, I think he is probably having a manic episode. We are not having the discussion about addiction. Everyone's very, very compassionate about addiction. But in the case of Hunter Biden and politics, they're like, oh no, just throw away the key, lock him up, et cetera, et cetera. Why aren't we raising those tough conversations? We talk in this country about giving people second chances. Maybe this is an opportunity to say, hey, and even his mother said it. Jill Biden said, listen, this was a really hard time for my son. She finally spoke out about it and said he had a bad addiction problem and nobody's talking about it.
Yeah, but part of overcoming addiction is being accountable and making amends. And part of making amends in this country when you steal from the country is to pay it back and then go to jail. Am I wrong?
Let the process take its course, right? Let the legal process take its course.
I was going to say, you're not wrong, but Chau is right. This guy has addiction problems. He should be talking about that and getting help as opposed to doing what he's doing. But I'll tell you what concerns me He and his uncles were foreign agents for Russia, China, Ukraine. All these disreputable countries have been paying off the family. I think the total now they think is about $40 million. I don't know what Joe Biden got. I'm sure he got taken care of. The evidence will come out, but they have sold the foreign policy of the United States. In Iran, too. You wonder, why are we so reluctant to take on Iran? Well, maybe because he got paid.
Well, we'll wait and see on the evidence there. Go ahead, Tomaro.
I find it kind of hard to find that he got paid, because he admitted on TV when his son had cancer, he had to borrow the money. And he borrowed the money from the Obamas. He didn't have it.
That was a long time ago.
You know, to say that, you know, till you see evidence there, where unlike we got evidence on January 6th and y'all still saying he didn't do nothing.
All right, Wayne, you know, you've been really good. Your personal sonar is good at determining when people are wrong. You know, W-R-O-N-G. Is he wrong?
Look, for a panel that's so quick to put Ken Paxton in prison because of smoke, hold on, which I agree is there, right? With Hunter Biden and Joe's brother and everybody in the family getting money, everyone says, gee, what? There's nothing to see here. Gee, I mean, come on. I mean, let's be honest. The president has either taken money or at the very least allowed his relatives to take money, selling out American interests. For me, that's a deal killer. You're done. That's corruption.
All right, got to leave it there. Still to come, the thin blue line getting thinner as fewer and fewer Texans embrace the once honored mission to protect and serve. On tonight's edition of Texas, The Issue Is, airing at 9:45 right here on Fox 26, we examine the recruitment crisis crippling police departments across the Lone Star State.
Training, better education for our citizens, getting our citizens to better understand what these officers are up against. The anti-police rhetoric that is out there is causing more damage than you can possibly imagine.
Let's talk about that, folks. Look, I know that Sylvester Turner, when he ran, said, I'm going to put 1,000 more police in the department. That never happened. In fact, the police department is smaller than it was when he took office.
8 years ago.
John Whitmire has talked about, you know, some innovative stuff like, hey, let's go recruit from the State Department of Criminal Justice, because we pay more than those guys, and there's thousands of those guys. You know, different ideas. Bill, this is a problem.
It's absolutely a problem. It's been a problem for a long time. Our police force is basically the same size that it was 20 years ago. And it's just not an attractive profession for a lot of young people to go into. I think what we need to do, and what I advocated when I ran, is we need to work with the high school for criminal justice. We need to work with community colleges, and we need to build up a farm system like the sports clubs do to train young people and incentivize them to become police officers. And in many ways, as you could be more comfortable with the technology that, you know, they have to use today. We have a very old police force in the city of Houston.
Real quickly, Gary, you talk to cops all the time in court. I mean, you know, what are they saying?
They feel they have a thankless job. I mean, when they're out in patrol, they can be shot at any time, and they're not appreciated. That's why, you know, there was a trend a couple of years ago where people said you should thank people for serving. As police. So I obviously try to do that, and I'm very polite to the police officers, except when I'm cross-examining them and they're not telling the truth. But that doesn't happen very often.
Got 30 seconds.
Yes. Thank you, public servants. The same thing that Bill said about the police being able to recruit from the criminal justice, the firefighters need that same kind of opportunity. There needs to be some program at a high school. We got aviation and everything else. First off, AKAs, Happy Founders Day.
All right, hey, let's go all together. Go Texans!
I want to thank my colleagues for wearing this. That's right. We're the only ones on the panel.
Thanks to this week's panel, and thank you for joining us. The conversation continues on a national level next on Fox News Sunday with Shannon Bream. And we'll keep talking here with What's Your Point Overtime, streaming live on Fox Local. And sure to download that system. It's a free app. From all of us here, have a safe and healthy week.
Go Texans.
Bye. We're on screen this time.